In my previous video, you watched how we cut the fabric into wide bias strips. We also attached the strips together, and then the strips were sewn together. In this video, we're going to actually attach the strips that we've sewn together to the hem of the skirt. All that's coming up next on Sewing with Nyla. Now you got one long piece. So now you want to attach the hem to the skirt. Now since there already is a hem here, I'm not going to cut it off because I'm going to be serging this off eventually. So I'm just going to start somewhere. Let's see, I'm going to start at the seam. So I'm going to start with right sides together. Okay, so I'm going to start to sew them together. Now you notice that right here, this is our open angled end. I'm not going to start right there. I'm going to move it over a little bit because I'm going to have to join this with the other end. So I'm just going to start pinning, and I'm just going to pin this all the way around. And when I pin it, I'm not pulling it. I'm making very sure that I don't stretch it. I want it to just come together nicely because it's going to fit. It's not going to be too tight or anything. The tension is going to be good. And see, when you fold it over, you're going to get that nice little band on the bottom. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to pin this all the way around, and I'll come back and see you once I've got it all pinned. So now we've got to join these. And so what I like to do is undo it. Then I'm going to lay this one on top of it. I'm going to cut this one here across the grain as well. And I'm eyeing this, but I'll be able to line it up once I get the two together. Okay, now that I've got the mark cut, I'm going to take the mark here and line it up with the corner there. I'm going to pin it in place for now, and I'm just going to follow this all the way down. So now I'm going to go ahead and stitch this down. So now you see I have the two seams here, that's okay. I don't mind the seams there. If you want less seams, you'll actually have to have more fabric. But if you've got more fabric, and if it matches, then, you know, that's cool. But if you don't have more fabric, you can also use a contrast fabric to add your band at the bottom. So let me turn it over here. So I have the band already pinned in place at the bottom. You can see it's rounding just like the rest of the bottom of the hem. So now what you want to do is just sew all of this in place and then go back and serge it. So I'm going to sew them all in place. Okay, so my band has been added to the bottom of the dress. What has to be done now is this seam has to be serged and pressed. And when you press it, I'm going to press the seam so that the seam is going toward the dress and away from the band. So before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and serge the seam here so that we can cut off all that excess. And then I'll come back and show you what we do next. So here is the hem that I cut off. And this is why I was telling you before that on the actual hem, before we added the band, that I wouldn't cut that off. This is the beauty of the serger. The serger will serge and cut at the same time. So now that that bulky hem has been cut off, and now you just want to go and just press this seam down. So I'm going to go ahead and press it, and I'll show you what it looks like after I press it. Now the hem is all pressed down, and I think it turned out rather nice. But you know me, I always like to add a little extra something to it because this fabric was a different dye lot from this fabric, even though they're the exact same fabric. I want to do something to blend the two together. And I think I'm going to make a satin bias ribbon. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just cut my bias strips, as many of them as I can. Have all my bias strips cut out. So here is our side seam here. And that's where I'm starting first. So I'm going to take my band, and I'm going to place it. Here is the side seam. I'm going to place it with the right sides down. I'm going to go ahead and start to sew the band in place. And I'm going to sew this all the way around. And as I sew, there's a seam under here. I'm making sure the seam that I press forward I'm going to try my best and catch that seam. I may not be able to, but I'm going to try my best to. So I'm going to sit right on top of that, and then I'm going to start to sew. As far as the seam allowance I'm just using it's a scant 1/4 inch, meaning it's a little bit more than a 1/4 inch, but not quite a 3/8. And I'm just lining it up with the presser foot. Okay, now I'm back meeting up. I'm meeting up with my seam here. So we're going to do just like we did before with the band. I'm cutting this at an angle, and I'm laying the band on top of it, and I'm going to cut this at an angle so that I have a little extra fabric. I'm going to take your 2 pieces and you're going to stitch them together, right sides together. And now that you got it stitched together, you just continue to sew the band onto the dress, the skirt. So I wanted to show you what happens. We got the band all sewn on, and now what happens when you flip it down, now you're seeing that really pretty, the little band. And see, when you pin that down in place and you see you get that nice satin band, and by doing that, you can't tell the difference where the seams started and stopped, and that really just finishes it off. And you're also catching in that seam. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch this now, and I think I'm going to do this without pinning it. I'm going to start at the side seam. That's where I always like to start. Bring it together, fold it over, and top stitch it down. And this is where you want to be mindful of your stitches, because this will be shown on the outside. So you want to make this as neat as possible, and you want to make your band as even as possible. So I have my band attached. So all I'm going to do now is just do a simple serge and top stitch, and then I'll be done. Okay, the hem is finished. I did a simple serge seam and a top stitch on top of that, so it would lay nice and flat on the bottom. And by adding this band to overlap the seam that connects the skirt and the facing band, it actually helped to eliminate that color difference or the dye lot difference between the 2 fabrics. So now with the band connected, they blend together. My circle skirt is finished. I have added the band to extend the length of it. I did the nice satin biased band trim that would cover up the seams so that the 2 fabrics would blend together. I did a simple serge stitch and then a top stitch. So I think the skirt turned out rather nice, and I will get more wears out of it. Now it really is my favorite skirt because it's long enough. So I hope that this tip has been helpful on how to extend your existing circle skirt. And I hope you try it. Happy sewing!